Today I'm getting set up to sow some of my hardy annuals. It's August and you may think, why am I sowing hardy annuals now? But it really is a good kickstart into next year's season. So it means you've got less to do next year. You've already got something going and they're more than likely going to be flowering sooner. So it means that normally when there's a little bit of a lull in flowers in June or July, then you've got things going quickly so that it gives you a break for the spring flowers to catch up. So you have your tulips in May, your autumn sown hardy annuals in flowering probably June through to early July. Then you've got your spring flowering annuals of whatever variety flowering from then on. So it just helps fill the gap. So I am going to be sowing hardy annuals. Hardy annuals are annuals that can withstand a bit of frost. So don't be looking at the tender or half hardy annuals at this point in time in August. They will not survive the winter. Don't waste your seed, don't waste your time. Just look at hardy annuals. Hardy annuals can be sown autumn or spring. They can withstand a bit of frost, and indeed you may find that they self-sow in your garden naturally. So once you've got some already sown and growing in your garden and flowering and setting seed, they may well set seed on your garden anyway and will just sprinkle their seedlings throughout your garden, and you have them and they withstand the winter. And that certainly happened for me last year. Nigella, cornflowers, Cerinthe, all self-seeded and all withstood what was for the UK quite a harsh winter. So it has opened my eyes to autumn sowing, and I am going to get started with the hardy annuals now so I don't have to do as much next spring. So these hardy annuals that I'm sowing, I'll be sowing into seed trays because I don't have the space in the garden at the moment. But I will be planting them out into the ground, hopefully by the end of September, so that they can establish before the frosts really start and they can build their growth and get themselves established. So I might keep a few back and put those in the greenhouse just as a safety net, as a precaution, and actually maybe an experiment to see what works best. I am hopeful the seedlings in the ground will survive better than my greenhouse seedlings, because no doubt I will either overwater, underwater them over winter, or forget about them completely, and we'll see. But it's a little bit of a backup. It depends how many germinating. I don't need many flowers for my cutting patch, so I'm aiming for maybe 6 to 10 plants of each of the varieties, and then if they come through, that's brilliant for the gap in June when they will be flowering, and then I can sow some more in spring if I need to. It also, by sowing them now in autumn, it gives me the chance to have them fail and I can do them again in spring if need be. When I'm sowing seeds, multiple seeds in the same tray, I try to balance out the properties of each of the seeds. So I don't want to be growing a seed that will be germinated in 7 days, for instance, with a seed that's going to take 2 months to germinate, because the growth of those two seedlings will be at odds with each other. So what I want to do primarily is have germination at a similar time, so that they grow at a similar rate, and so I can transplant them at a similar time, so that we're not disturbing them when I need to transplant the next ones on. On top of that, I also like to try and have seeds that are sown in a similar fashion. So if they need to be surface sown, i.e. just sprinkled on the top, it's easier to have a lot of seeds that are done like that than have some that need to be deep, some that need to be 6mm, then another one that's 3mm, then another one that's surface sown. It's easy to do the same depth for all of them, and then you can cover the lot with the right amount of compost. It's more tricky to manage that when you've got different depth that you want to sow at. That I don't think is as important as the germination time, because they need, as I said, you don't want to be disturbing seeds that haven't yet germinated whilst you pot on seeds that have germinated and grown really quite well. So it is a good idea to plan how you're going to sow your seeds, so that you can make sure they're sown in with appropriate companions if you're sharing your seed trays. I've already prepared a seed tray. The seed tray has got just standard multi-purpose peat-free compost, the best that you can afford, but it doesn't really matter too much for seed germination, because you don't need that much nutrition in the seed tray for germination. However, if you're keeping them in the tray for longer, then there will need to be a bit of nutrition. So if you were going to be potting them on quite quickly, then any old cheap compost will do. But I want to save time and effort and money, so I only buy multi-purpose, and I just sow them into a seed tray that is deep enough to let them grow until they're relatively substantial seedlings. They don't need to be very big, but have more than the first true leaves. So to have at least the first two true leaves of the seedling, but probably a bit more. So the seed trays are generally, I like to use deeper seed trays so I can give them that room for growth without me having to pot on. So my seed tray has been prepared. It has got some compost in, and it has got a bit of vermiculite to allow for a bit of moisture retention. So all of the seeds will be sown according to their specific instructions, and once the seeds are sown, I will be watering it from the bottom. I have a tray of water here, so this is a tray without holes, obviously, and it just gathers rainwater over the summer, of which we've had plenty this summer. And I just place my seed tray in it, and it will gradually, over half an hour to an hour, the water will seep up through the compost and will start the process of germination with the seeds. So the seeds will have everything it needs: water, nutrition, and in this instance, light. So once that is fully watered, I'll then just move it up to the top, find a space and leave it out there. As this is August and it's an autumn sown seed, or late summer autumn sown, I can leave these outside. There's no chance of frost at this point in the year, so they can just be left outside to germinate. They don't need to be protected in any way. I could have direct sown them, so I could have made some space in the borders and sown them directly into the ground. However, I haven't got space in the borders at this point in time because they're full of flowers. So this is why we're sowing them on the seeds, sowing them in seed trays, and it also helps gives me time to plan where they're going to go later on in the season. So I don't need to waste space in my cutting patch for plants that are not going to be flowering this year. So if you want to get started sowing your annual seeds in autumn or late summer as it is now, so that you can get started earlier next spring, so you're not having the hassle of doing it then, you can concentrate on all of your tender annuals in spring. If you want to do that, I have seeds in my shop for all of the varieties of seeds that I'm going to be sowing over the next coming weeks. Go to the shop and get some seeds and start sowing.